Hi, today's job is fixing this oven. It's a Hotpoint oven, and the main oven has a electrical problem that every time that you turn on the oven it trips the circuit breaker out and all of the power goes. In fact, it trips the earth leakage circuit breaker, so somewhere in there there's an earth leakage fault. So you need to take it all apart, find out where the fault is. And to do that we need to take it out from its cabinet. So it's held in by some screws here, here, here and over here. So undo those and then the oven should slide out from its cabinet. Okay, so we have removed the 6 screws that hold the top plate in place, and you can now remove that. And you see we support the oven on a couple of chairs so you can get easy access to it, and the cable at the back stretches to reach. So now we have access to the top part of the oven and various circuitry, and next we unscrew the rear panel to get access to the electrical connections to the fan and the heaters and the mains electrical coming in. Make sure you have the mains disconnected or switched off with a double isolation switch, and then you need to get yourself a multimeter, and then we start measuring some resistances. So first we'll measure the resistance of the main heating element, which is this unit on the back, and the resistance is 28 odd ohms, which is probably about right. And then we'll check for any earth leakage by measuring the resistance down to ground. So the green and yellow connections are the ground connection, and measure on one side. I think we need to have a bit more sensitivity to our resistance measurement, go up to the 2 megaohm range. And on one side you see here we've got a 1 megaohm, and actually a changing resistance, which means there's a capacitance from these heater connections down to ground. So not having spotted anything obviously wrong, checking over all the wiring. The only thing was that slightly high resistance going from earth to live or neutral. And looking around the circuit board, there don't seem to be any suppressing capacitors that are that noticeable, at least nothing going down to earth. So maybe that is a little bit suspicious. And what I've done next to diagnose the problem is to disconnect the heating element from the 2 wires, make sure they're not touching anything, and repowered up the oven. And when turning on the oven, it then didn't blow the fuse. So what I suspect is happening is there's an earth leakage actually on the oven element itself that's blowing the earth leakage trip in the circuit board. And we'll just double check that by measuring the resistance of that heater now that nothing is connected down to earth. The centre part of the element is earth, and let's see if we get some resistance measurement. Yep, and we see quite a high resistance, and it's acting like a capacitance. But from one side, if you turn the probes around the other way, it effectively charges a capacitor in the opposite direction, and you get a brief moment where there's current flowing, and a brief moment where you get resistance showing. So what this means is we've got a slight leakage down to earth in the heating element, and we need a new heating element. And to remove the heating element, we need to get inside the oven. Let's just turn the flash on, and we unscrew the 4 screws that hold the fan and heater cover in place. There's the 4 screws, and this is the heating element, which is held in place by 2 screws here. So we just need to unscrew those, and hopefully it'll lift out from the front. And there's one more screw at the bottom as well, needs to be removed. hammer the screws out. The heating element now just lifts out like so. Then we go on the internet and search for Hotpoint heater element for a fan oven. So this is a website I found, and they list them on the model number of the oven. So you select that from the list, and then it gives you the Hotpoint part number, and it's about £20. So we can either order it online or pick it up from a local parts shop. Okay, so here we have the new elements ordered from a company on the internet. Arrived 1 day later, next day delivery, same size as the old one which is there. So all we've got to do now is refit that in the oven and we should all be good to go. Right, so that's the covers screwed back into place, and the power has just been reconnected, turned on. So we'll just test whether the oven now can be turned on without blowing the fuse. Oh, one thing, got to set the clock first. So we'll just set it to something random, that'll do, otherwise it doesn't allow you to turn on the oven. So now, test the oven. And, beauty, turns on, no fuse is stripped out, and the oven is now working. So that is how to fix your oven. This happens to be a Hotpoint, but it probably applies to a lot of different makes of ovens. And that's how to change the heater element if your oven is not working, or if your oven is blowing a fuse or blowing the earth leakage trip, circuit breaker. Okay, job done, and it cost about £24 for the part, including postage with next day delivery. A lot cheaper than calling somebody out to do it, and the part was also a lot cheaper from a company on the internet than from the local electrical wholesale supplier, which was within driving distance. It was at least, I think, twice the price for a patented part rather than the original part. So well worth using the internet and well worth fixing it yourself. Okay, job done, thanks for watching. Cheers, bye.